convert scientific notation to a standard form. To convert these numbers in standard form, they are already in scientific notation. To convert this in standard form, it means I have to rewrite it back into its original form. And that's what we call a standard form. Well, because the exponent is positive, I have to move the decimal point, and all what I have to do is look at the exponent. This is how many units I'll be moving the decimal point, on this case 3 units. So if I count the units, this is where the decimal point is. I'm moving it to the right, 1, 2, 3. And you see this place that is empty, I'm gonna put 0. If that is the case, then I can write it this way. Should be 5, then it's gonna be 0, 3, and the empty place, that would be 0. And now the decimal point should be always here at the end, but nobody writes it. Okay, so the answer should be 5030, but anyway, I'm gonna put the decimal point. All right, so that's how we write this number in scientific notation. We always gonna be looking at the sign, okay? When it's positive, you always moving the decimal point to the right. Now, look at the next one. How many units? 3 units. Starting right here. That would be 1, 2, 3 units. So the answer, I'm gonna write 4, then that will be the second one right here, and then 2 zeros. Okay, 1 and 2. And then put the decimal point. Okay, the answer should be 4,400 or 4,400. Okay, the next one, this will be 2 times 10 to the fourth power. Remember, the exponent is going to tell you how many units you have to move the decimal point, and that will be 4 units. Now, you don't see the decimal point, right? So we have to put the decimal point, and now moving it 4 units. So let me write it here. So that should be 1, 2, 3, 4 units. And that means I have to put 4 zeros. So then the answer should be writing 4 zeros. So the answer should be 20,000. Okay. Once you move the decimal point 4 units, then that's it. Okay. So what we got here is going to be 4,000. And we're going to keep moving it. Remember, the decimal point to the right because the exponent is positive. All right. So that would be the answer for this one. Let's do another one. Now, for this one, uh, we're moving the decimal point 4 units to the right. So that's where the decimal point is located. So I'm going to move it, count the units, 1, 2, 3, and 4. These empty places, you're going to put 0. Okay? So now I'm going to write 198 and then 2 zeros, 1 and 2. And then I'm gonna put the decimal point. But now look, if we count the units, the decimal point was here. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4. So we get 19,800. So that's what the answer should be. Okay, 19,800. The next one. Okay, so for the next one, we have 9.2 times 10 to the fifth power. This is in scientific notation. Remember, that's how it looks like. Now, looking at this exponent, it's going to tell me how many units we're moving back the decimal point to the right. So let me do it here. Okay, count the units. Should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. So you see these empty places? I'm gonna put zeros. Okay, you always gonna put 0. Okay, So on this case, I'm gonna rewrite it. So the answer should be, I'm gonna write 920,000, and that will be the answer right there. Okay. So on this case, then that's the original number. That's what we call a standard form. Okay. And that's the answer. Now, can you see for the next one? This is 3.5 times 10 to the 0 power. Anytime when you see the 0 exponent, think of it this way. It's like you didn't move the decimal point. Uh, it is basically, you just gonna leave the decimal point exactly in the same place. And you see how this is 10 to the fifth? That's how many times you move the decimal point. Here, you didn't have to. Another thing, any number to the 0 power is gonna be 1. So this is gonna be 3.5 times 1. And that means that you didn't move the decimal point. So it is gonna be exactly in the same place. So on that case, the answer should be 3.5. Only when you move the decimal point, you write how many units you're moving it. On this case, you didn't move it. It's 0 times. So that's how the answer is going to stay the same. For the next one, this is how many units you move the decimal point to the right. 5 times. So if we count the units, okay, that should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. And you see the empty spaces, you're gonna put 0. Okay, so that means that the answer should be 400,000. Okay, and count the units, 5 units. 2 plus 3, that would be 5. Okay, the next one. The next one is gonna be 7.23 times 10 to the second power. So this is how many times you're moving the decimal point. You're gonna be moving it twice. So the decimal point is here. This is already in scientific notation. So to write it back in standard form, we're gonna move the decimal point 2 units. Okay, and that's how the answer should be 723. That's the answer. Okay, so then we have to put the decimal point. Many people don't do it, by the way. It's just 723. We only write it, and we're gonna keep writing it this time because you learning how to convert scientific notation into a standard form. But basically, we never write the decimal point. You see all of this? We never write them. But because we're learning, then we have to. Okay. Now, look at the next one. You don't see the decimal point, right? Well, if you don't see it, the decimal point should be always at the end. All right. Now, this 0 means you didn't move it anywhere. Okay. But this one is in a standard form. To write it in a standard form, we're just gonna write 8. Okay. And that will be the answer. But now look, because they wanted you to write 8 in scientific notation, it has to be always times 10. And to the 0 power means that you didn't move the decimal point, but this is the way how you write it in scientific notation. That's why this 0 is going to be here. I know sometimes it looks a little bit confusing, but the 0 means that this is going to be 8 times 1. Any number to the 0 power is going to be 1. And for you, you have to think of it this way. I didn't move the decimal point anywhere. That's why it's going to be 0. Now, when we say the answer is going to be 8, we don't have to write the decimal point. We never do anyway, right? But because we're learning today how to write it in scientific notation, I'm gonna write it, but in reality, we don't have to do it. Okay. So the answer on this case is gonna be 8, and that's it.